Okay, our first scripture lesson comes to us from Isaiah 40, verses 21 to 31, found on page 632 in your Pew Bible. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me, and who is my equal? Says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these? He who brings out their host and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength, mighty in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint.
The lectionary called for us this day to read the Gospel according to Mark in the first chapter, beginning at the 21st verse. But Mario preached on that last week and carried us through verse 28. And the story continues then, beginning in verse 29. And so we'll read till the end of the chapter, reading at verse 29 of the first chapter of Mark. As soon as they left the synagogue behind, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. Jesus came, and Jesus took her by the hand, and Jesus lifted her up. The fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And Jesus cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew who he was. In the morning, while it was still very dark, Jesus got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." Jesus answered, "Then let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is why I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues, casting out demons. A leper came to him, begging Jesus, and kneeling, he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, "I do choose. Be clean." Immediately, the leprosy left him, and he was made clean all over. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But the man began to proclaim it freely and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into the town openly, but stayed out in the countryside, and people came to him, searching for him from every quarter. So end our lessons for this day. Last week, Mario laid out for you 4 different questions revolving around, what are you most afraid of? This morning, I'd like to pick up on that and add 3 different questions because Jesus left the man behind at the synagogue, left that experience behind where so many were afraid, and went out into Simon Peter's house and saw there his mother-in-law who was ill with a fever and raised her up, and then reached out to all who were ill, all who were demon-possessed, to come and to be healed. So the question before us this morning is, do you believe that Jesus Christ can heal us of everything that troubles us? Do you believe? What do you wish to leave behind? And being healed, what do you go out to do? Do you believe Jesus can heal us of all things? What do you leave behind? And what do you go out healed to do? We struggle with passages about miracles and exorcisms. We're children of the Enlightenment, and during the Enlightenment, they would reread these passages and interpret it slightly differently to dispel the miracles. The story of Jesus feeding 5,000 with a little boy's lunch is like the story of stone soup, where everyone was so shamed by the little boy sharing openly with everyone that they all got out of their reserves and shared. Thomas Jefferson is described as having said that Jesus didn't really walk on the Sea of Galilee. Instead, he was on the shore, and there was a cloud bank covering the shore so you couldn't see his feet, and it appeared as though he walked on water. As children of the Enlightenment, we want to dispel miracles. We're not sure what we're supposed to do with exorcisms. When we hear about exorcisms, we think of zombies and vampires and the movie The Exorcist, and we don't want to do that in church. So we're not sure what we're supposed to do or believe. The fact of the matter is that exorcisms are not about casting out snakes, not about casting out demons, but instead calling for God to come into the life of another person. We have demons in our lives. We have diseases that plague us. They're all over the commercials. There's a little green guy called Mr. Mucus that if you have Mucinex, you can cast out the demon. There's a little pink woman who plagues women with a persistent complaint that they need to go find a restroom. And if you can only find Mirbetric, you can cure this plague that calls upon you. If you have persistent rumbling in your stomach, you have a shadow self like your ego who's following you around, controlling your life. We have these demons controlling us, and we have found ways to deal with the symptoms. But what the scriptures call us to do is, instead of masking the symptoms, to concentrate on healing, to believe that God and God alone can heal us. There's a difference between being cured of our symptoms and being healed. The authorities in that day were frustrated with Jesus, both at the synagogue and at Simon's home and with the leper, because on the Sabbath he cured. But it's more than that. It's more than that because they understood in that time that there was a hierarchy to all of life. There was a caste system in the Roman world, there was a caste system in the Greek world, and there was also a caste system in the world of faith. God alone is at the top, and underneath God were other gods, and underneath the other gods were angels and demons and spirits, and underneath those were human beings, and underneath those were the animals that were pure for sacrifice and for eating, and underneath those were beasts of burden, and underneath those were the unclean. And when Jesus commanded healing to happen, when he exhorted God to come, it was not by the power of some other lesser God, it was not by the power of an angel, but instead Jesus Christ commanded that they be healed. Jesus Christ commanded that the demons come out, and they were. And what he was doing was claiming an authority above the angels, above the demons, above the other gods, an authority equal with God. And that made them very afraid. One of our greatest fears is illness. It makes us not have control. It makes us give up our schedules and our routines and all of our plans to do whatever it says. In the last month, 32 out of the 50 states in America have been so plagued with illness that they've closed down public buildings, they've closed down worship services, they've said at different churches, we will not shake hands in peace, we will not celebrate communion, and God help us, we cannot hug or kiss in the church. Because it passes disease. And what Jesus did was to reach out and touch the woman with a fever, to hold her by the hand and lift her up. And she was a woman on the Sabbath. But the incredible part about that is not that she was female or that it was the Sabbath, but rather, when you are sick, you're not able to be yourself. You're not able to do all the things that you want to do. In the Middle East, in the ancient world, our roles and our responsibilities protected the culture, allowed the culture to continue because you knew that it was safe. Mom was always mom. Dad was always dad. The children always behaved. You knew what you were supposed to do. And when someone gets ill, it takes out two people. It takes out the one who's ill and also the caregiver. And they're not able to do what they wanted to do. As the mother-in-law, she was the head of the household. She was the host. And the most precious thing in the ancient world, the strongest custom and ritual, was being a gracious host, welcoming others into your home. What Jesus did that day, this is a horribly maligned passage because everyone has read it and said, how dare Jesus go to this poor old sick woman and tell her to get out of bed and serve her sons? That's not what this is about. Instead, Jesus comes to her and lifts her by the hand so that she is restored to her place of honor and she can host all those who come. She can do what she was created to do as a host. We are the hosts in this place. And the word for hosting, the word for service, is also the word we use, deacon, for that office of service. Imagine, we as a people of God have all come here with various different concerns. We've come with different illnesses. We've come with concerns for our marriages, for our children, for our reputations, for our world. It's not hard to imagine. And suddenly, the doors of the church burst open like some episode from Grey's Anatomy or Chicago Med or The Resident or The Good Doctor. You know those scenes where the ambulances pull up and suddenly hundreds of patients come rushing in. That is what we as the church are to be, to demonstrate healing and care and concern for all those who are wounded. I love this image of Peter's mother-in-law, not only for healing Jesus and being there to host him, but that night and all the next day, everyone from the entire city, all the surrounding region, all came to her house, and she hosted them. All. She welcomed them. Would we be so gracious if in the midst of our worship service, in the midst of our being church, suddenly the doors burst open and the ambulances came in with people in need? I would tell you my struggle as a pastor, my greatest frustration, is that we are very good at being there with people when they are in need, when they're in crisis. But afterwards, after we get back to routines and get control of our lives, people tend to disappear, and we lose one another. My hope and prayer is that we would understand what Jesus offered the people was more than a cure for their ailments. They all came to him because he could make their headaches go away. He could cure their nausea, their leprosy, their being lame and deaf. But what he was about was redemption, restoring to wholeness, restoring as a human being. When you get fired from a job, it hurts. When you are forced to retire before you're ready. When you are left by those that you love, it breaks your heart. And what Jesus is offering is that we would be restored and redeemed as whole persons, not broken, not left. Everyone is searching for a cure to their pains. This is more than a story about medicine versus faith. It's more than a story of victory. This is a story of Christ caring. 2,000 years ago, Jesus healed all the problems of the world. We don't have to do that. All we need to do is stand beside each other and say, "Bless you." To walk beside each other and encourage each other in the midst of the struggles. And when we do, when we embrace the wholeness of the person and call for them to be redeemed, when we have an exorcism and leave behind all the sin and brokenness and instead hold up the good, then they mount up with wings like eagles. They run without growing weary. They walk without ever being tired. Thanks be for the power of God.